Are you reading this book? He's bigger, he's badder than ever. Let's talk Absolute Batman. Absolute Batman has been a breath of fresh air coming out of last year into this new year in 2025. So I just read in the last day or two issue number 5. So I think issue number 6, I believe, is the end of this current arc. So if you haven't checked it out, good time to try to get in kind of from the ground floor. But in this video, we're going to talk not any major plot points, but I will have some spoilers. So if you want to avoid any of that, certainly maybe read everything, then come back. But again, if you've read it or don't care if little things get spoiled, that is okay. So again, we're going to talk about some spoilers, but we won't get into not like a full scale review of any kind. But Absolute Batman has been, in my opinion, it's been super fun so far. Like I said in the intro, he is bigger than ever, badder than ever. So let's get into it. But I think it's been really interesting. I think we're at a time where we're having the Ultimate Universe and we're having the Absolute Universe. And I've been, somewhat excited for both. I mean, I really am not like a huge alternate universe guy. I think sometimes I fall into that pit of like, oh, this doesn't really impact the main continuity. Does anything happen here really matter? But at the same time, also that's why it's fun, is because there can be real stakes where, yeah, we know that some of these characters are not going to get killed off in the main, the main line, where Absolute or Ultimate could have some opportunities to kind of do new things, do things that are fresh instead of kind of same old, same old. So in some ways, I think that is fun. But there are times where I kind of get away from certain titles. But Absolute Batman has been a ton of fun. So to kind of go starting off here, and again, maybe some spoilers here, but no major plot points. Starting off with kind of Batman's origin, right? I think the really fun aspect of this series is that, both Thomas and Martha Wayne do not die. I think that's a big thing that kind of starts off the series, where Thomas Wayne is not a doctor. He is a teacher. They're on a school trip at the zoo, and then there's a shooting that takes place, which claims the life of Thomas Wayne. But growing up, Bruce still has his mother, and it's still interesting to kind of see how that has still shaped him with losing a parent, but still having one. We see Bruce kind of later on almost kind of avoiding his mother to kind of protect her and to just kind of steer clear. So that's been a pretty interesting dynamic. But I think one of the main things that has struck me is this is almost like if Batman was Spider-Man, right? Like the money is just not there, where I think that's been a big defining factor of Bruce's life, and that just not the money's been the most important thing by any means, but that has helped him develop the arsenal that he has, all the tools that he uses to fight crime. So that's been really interesting. Like you see in a scene here of him coming up with a device that kind of takes down a vehicle, and then he describes all this for $1,000 or something. So it's just kind of cool to see him consider the financial side and how to kind of make that work too. So yeah, that's been interesting to see of him kind of more from a middle class family, and seeing what that dynamic is like. I also think it's really interesting that we look at Bruce from how he knows the city. I think one of the main things with Batman is that he knows Gotham, he knows it so well. But when you stop and think about it too, someone that is born wealthy like that certainly can learn. But I think from being more from a middle class family, I think that he'd have so much more exposure to the city itself, and not living kind of in the suburbs or things like that too. So Bruce he's an engineer, but he's gone through different parts of the city to kind of learn it. And I think that makes sense, where he has different kind of locations across Gotham where he has, hideouts, and we see that. And one of the issues in the series is that he knows that city so well because of his work experience. I think that just makes so much more sense than Bruce Wayne that we know and love, and how well he knows the city. So I think that makes a ton of sense. So that's been really interesting to see. But so going back to Batman, I think one thing that struck me was just as everybody else, is just the size of him. I saw somewhere that, I don't know if this is true, that they're hoping that he's like 6'7", but he is huge. There is, I think it was in issue 1 or 2, there was a scene where, I believe it's issue 1, where we see Bruce for the first time, not as Batman, and there's someone boxing at a gym, and we kind of assume that is Bruce Wayne, and until this giant kind of approaches and wants to get on the bag because they're boxing, and then we learn that is Bruce, and he is just ginormous and just jacked beyond belief. So he is as big as we've ever seen him, right? Kind of like Frank Miller-esque, but young. That sort of thing if you're looking Dark Knight Returns. So he's just a ginormous guy. I think too, like he is definitely like very brutal, and we've seen comics where Batman can kind of get pushed to the edge, but we've seen all sorts of things. We've seen him, I think one of the coolest additions is the bat symbol on the chest is actually, he can take that off and use it as an axe. Like we see, again, spoilers, we see him chop off an enemy's hand at one point. We see him wearing his cape. He has spikes where it's like almost like he flexes and the spikes go out. We see a scene where somebody crawls on his back and then he kind of lets the spikes go, and then the other guy gets stabbed through the arms, and just brutal stuff where, again, we're not going for, him killing, but he's, snapping limbs left and right and cutting hands off. Everything is just kind of dialed up to the extreme. That was one thing I didn't love was, and again, it's kind of fun, but also it's kind of like we're hitting that point a little hard where we look at the Batmobile and it is like a giant, I don't even know what it is, like a giant like dump truck basically. And it just, that's like a little bit hard to buy. It fits with the theme that, he's bigger and just kind of brute force at this point. And I think at this point we still have a younger Batman too, where, that's maybe some of the point too, is it's more of shock and awe kind of towards the beginning, if that's kind of the goal. That's the one part that's a little bit like, I don't know, maybe a little bit, we hit it on top of the head, I think, a little bit there. But anyway, getting into some of the side characters too, lots of familiar faces and some similar roles, some different roles too. But I think that's a really interesting dynamic. And one of the things that stood out to me right away was that some of Bruce's friends are actually kind of from his rogues gallery, right? Like we see Riddler, we see Two-Face, we see the Penguin, but they're Bruce's friends, right? They're sitting around the table playing cards. He's going to them for advice, where it's just, as we know of, they're not maybe active criminals. And again, if they are, we haven't really seen much of that yet. We have a scene where Selina Kyle and Bruce know each other as kids. So he's grown up around these people. But again, right away, I was like, oh, it just seems like, of course, just feels like awfully convenient. But as you think about it, like if you're looking the absolute universe, it's supposed to parallel their main universe where these people still exist, but then like the roles are kind of mixed up. So like, well, it would make sense that they're a part of his life in some way. But that's interesting, and I think we'll see more and more from that. Not a ton yet, but it's been, that was kind of a shock to see that. Alfred's another one that we get introduced to Alfred right in issue 1. And, he's not a butler, right? I think we expect that, but going more of the middle class route for the Wayne family, Alfred kind of rolls into Gotham. We kind of see some history with him and his daughter. The daughter doesn't really want anything to do with him, so we see some of that dynamic. And Alfred is, from what it looks like right off the bat, he's a mercenary, and he's kind of coming into the city for different missions. He kind of crossed paths with Bruce and figures out that he is Batman, and that leads to them going back and forth and then kind of teaming up a little bit. But things are kind of always a little bit rocky there, but really interesting, dynamic there where between Bruce and Alfred. So just a real switch up with some of the characters too. And then we have Jim Gordon running for mayor. So some of that like just makes a lot of sense for how things would progress maybe in the future too, and just the main Batman, the main DC universe. But a lot of interesting switch ups there. But so overall, I think if we're looking, without getting into too many specific plot points too, Batman right off the gate kind of has a big threat with Black Mask and just lots of destruction and violence and things happening too. So all of the qualities of the Batman that we know and love, but yet we're getting some new wrinkles and things where, characters are kind of on different sides, and lots of different dynamics. So it's just kind of like you're reading Batman for the first time, yet it still feels familiar. Yet there's some things that you kind of don't know what to expect. So it feels very, very unpredictable. So I would definitely give it, if we're ranking it, I'd say it's solid for me, solid 9 out of 10. I think it's been great so far, and I'm really interested to see where they go moving forward with it too. And, also to see after we get through that initial arc of kind of where they go next. So yeah, that's been, again, really super good book. It's been really refreshing to have something just kind of that feels just new and fresh. So yeah, I definitely would recommend that you guys check it out. And so yeah, I'm hoping to post some more videos of just some recent thoughts on some new comic book series. But Absolute Batman definitely is a winner. Check it out.